Hey everyone, welcome to a special edition of Web3 Simplified. I'm pumped because I've got my buddy Carroll here. This is Carroll Keane, and Carroll Keane is in St. Louis, Missouri, and he works for Cool Fire Studios as the creative director. And me and Carroll are in a Web3 NFT community called Reformers. Web3 Simplified is powered by Reformers. We have worked out a deal where the brands are basically making each other better, and in that, Carroll has helped me behind the scenes with some Web3 simplified stuff. And I have joined the leadership team of the Reformers NFT project. And Carroll, when we were chatting about this, we were chatting about community. We were chatting about also a Monday night, every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, or almost every Monday, we go live on Twitter Spaces for something called Reformers Radio. And we were talking about topics, and you were like, hey, I just love community. And so it made perfect sense because you and I were already talking about doing a podcast together. And so I would love for the people to hear your voice, and I would love for them to learn a little bit more about you and how you got into Web3 Simplified. So with that, Carroll, what's up, man?
Great to be here. Yes, that did happen. I am fairly into the idea of community and just seeing how Web3 fosters that. Um, Got into crypto in 2017. Was very sort of had this caught the vision of crypto and the ideals of crypto and was very excited. I'm a creative. I have a creative background. And so I got very excited about the ideas, but quickly realized that the only way that I could interact with crypto is by speculating. And that got tiring, especially when I started losing money. And so sort of realized, all right, well, I still love the ethos and what this, how this could change the world, yada, yada, but there's nothing really for me to do here. So when NFTs started popping up, and I started taking notice, I realized I think this is my thing. This is the way that I can enter into Web3 because really, I can understand the tech at some level. The tech is not what will ever get me excited. It's what it empowers and what it allows us to do. Which for me, the two best things are creating communities and creating experiences. So that's
Well,
the
and I
spiel.
love that because I was actually talking with a buddy of mine, and we were talking. It's actually a new acquaintance, and there's a new NFT project that he and a group of people are working on. It's in the sports world, and part of the utility of owning one of these NFTs is getting like private access to a tailgate or an event or like a private watch party. And I was like, you're not selling an NFT, right? You're selling a event ticket or a membership pass into this private club where you get to do all these cool things. NFT just happens to be the technology. And so
Yeah.
I resonate completely with that. And so when you think about like making things simple for people that are listening to this podcast, watching this video, if they're watching the video format, like what are in the most simplest form, like how can Web3 technology, how is Web3 technology already making it easy for people to create communities? Like how is it empowering people to do that?
Well, I think I always try to go back a few steps and think about institutions and groups and clubs and these organizations that are sort of larger than ourselves, and thinking about why have people since somewhat, I guess, since the beginning of time, why have we identified with things larger than us? In more recent, but still, not quite modern history, there's this idea of like your school. Think of Harvard. I mean, this exists still to an extent, but not nearly to the level of like being a Harvard man, 80, 60, 80, 100 years ago. And the reason that we identify with these institutions or organizations is that they stand for values that we can understand, and they're not as broken as us, or seemingly they're not as broken as us. Um, they've got these values that we align with, and we can sort of align with them and feel like um, almost like they can achieve those values. They inspire us to achieve them. It gives us that sense of belonging. It's a bit of a long answer, but just really trying to piece together like why are people rallying around these JPEGs? because truly, most of the way that Web3 has formed community has very little to do with the tech so far. The tech is the tech has created interest and eyes and focus on this trend, and people crave community. The tech is not creating community. We are creating community because we crave it, and NFTs happen to be the thing that we're rallying around right now. That can be a good or a bad thing depending on what values that community espouses and how we treat it. But that's really what I'm seeing so far. I think I'm talking about probably the majority, the 80% of NFT communities. I think there are some where the tech is really helping communities. I mean, of course, we know that Discord allows you to token gate certain sections and allow it to be exclusive. So that's such a low level application of the tech that I don't know. I'm the ideals guy. I'm the trends guy more than the actual tech, and so that's kind of what I think about when I think about communities in Web3 so far.
Well, and I think you're right on the money too, right? And let's go back to the institutions example because you were using Harvard, right? So, like, if you are a Harvard Law or a Harvard, like just a Harvard Business School grad, there is like a sense of pride in your school, a sense of pride in your degree. You see other people that are out wearing Harvard, and you instantly have a connection, regardless of like your age. And you're like, oh yeah, my dad went, and my mom went, and they met there, and I went. And then they're like, oh yeah, I went in this year. And did you have this professor, or where did you stay in school? Right. There's this instant connection. And a lot of it is just simply a logo. And what's really interesting, so the JPEGs, the 10,000 or the 5,000 NFT collections, these a lot of times are in the picture of like a figurehead. And so they're almost like a little logo that you can have on your
Yeah.
social media, because Twitter allows you to verify that you own that NFT now with your Twitter profile. So you can verify the fact that you actually went there. Like if you're walking through an airport and you see someone with a Harvard like shirt on, you don't know, like they could just be a Harvard fan. Their mom could
Right.
have been there. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a Harvard grad. And
Could be a
so you
hipster
can,
hitting up the thrift store.
yeah, exactly. They could have thought it was cool at the thrift store. So I love that example. And if people are wondering, so here's what I'm hearing you say also is that the institutions like Harvard, now while Web3, there's not a ton of like Harvard like institutions there yet, but there's still an institution like an organization, a group of people. Like one of the earliest ones that caught my attention was the Constitution DAO, right? If you remember
Mm-hmm.
that one. And that was the group of people who wanted to collectively come together, pool their money and pool their resources, and buy at auction one of the original copies of the United States Constitution. And they wanted to do so that it was owned like by the people, since the Constitution is like for the people, right? And
Yep.
so that was an institution. It was a group of people coming together to try to achieve something. And I agree with you. Like that is one way. And I love what you said. You said the tech is not creating community. We are creating community because we crave it, but it's allowing us to do that. And I think that's a really simple way of how is people are creating these organizations, whether it's a nonprofit or they're creating a for-profit company, and they're trying to achieve something. Some groups are right. Like I know that there's alpha groups, which basically means these are groups of investors that are all trying to make money. And so it's an institution, it's an organization, and they are all pooling their resources in crypto in order to buy certain things so that they can get certain rewards and kind of things, right? So what have you seen, like why is it so powerful to buy a JPEG of like a Bored Ape, like a monkey figurehead or a cheetah figurehead, or like I mean the reformers like ours, the reformers NFT, which you can learn more at reformersnft.com. So that one is a figurehead of like historical figures from the Protestant Reformation, right? So like
Yeah.
why do you think it's so powerful to have these figureheads on social media for community?
Well, I think you're right in I think you're totally right in the analogy of sort of seeing someone with a Harvard hat on and saying like, hey, did you go to Harvard? And I did too. And so it's that relating there. I mean, I think the art specifically is just another expression of the values of the community that's being formed. And I would just really encourage people who are joining communities and who are starting communities in Web3 to really think deeply about the values that you would like to uphold. You know, the first community that I was a part of in Web3 was Neo Tokyo. Shout out to Neo Tokyo. I mean, it's still my Web3 home because I got in, and what I saw was that the community upheld these values. They were stated, there were rules. This is what we do. This is our mission statement. Our mission statement is basically to be the ones that are building the Web3 future in the metaverse. And I felt a little bit like a fraud. I felt a little bit intimidated, but in a way that it inspired me because I related to the mission. And I thought, you know what, I'm not that, but I would like to become that. And this is the place that I will become that. And so I think that that's what organizations or institutions do beyond connecting to someone who is also a part of it or was a part of it, is it stands for these values that you know that you do not reach, that you do not measure up to. But rather than intimidating you and excluding you because you don't, it accepts you, but yet empowers you and encourages you to step up and live those values. And I think it's just a group of people that do that. And the good communities are where there's strong alignment within of individuals who are all kind of walking towards those values. And I think weak communities are either the values are not clear, or the community doesn't resonate with them, or the leadership, you know, isn't walking it out. But yeah, I think that's what I would say, is that beyond saying, yes, you're also in this group, it's like, where is this group? How is this group? Where is this group pointing me? Where is it directing me? And do I want to go there?
I had never thought of that before too. I love what you said, is that the art itself is an expression of the values. And I had written that down too, about how the art really can play into it, but maybe and I was thinking about it from a different mindset, right? So like my wife and I, for example, we love country music. And so when we were like, this was earlier, before we had a 5-year-old and almost 6-month-old now, we got to go to a lot more concerts. And we would walk around at these groups of people, like there was country music playing, people were having drinks, they were eating food, they were chatting, they were laughing, they were having a good time, they were singing the songs. And the songs, like the types of people that the country music like attracts, like country music I love personally because a lot of times it tells a story. It tells a story about everyday life, right? It's
Mhm.
about losing a truck and losing a dog and losing a woman, right? Like that's a lot. That's a lot of what the song, or losing your husband. Like, and I mean, like the scandalous songs where it's like they cheated on you kind of thing. I think of Carrie
Right.
Underwood's song, right? And so the art of the country music like drew us in, and then we kind of related to everybody because they were singing the songs. They were sometimes they would talk in an accent, sometimes they didn't, right? Like I would feel a lot like you, where I'm like, am I really helping build like the Web3 community? But really, if you're there in the community, like it doesn't have to all be about tech, right? A
Mhm.
community, if you think of like a city as a community, they need the tech people, they need the infrastructure people, they need the politician people, they need the people that are supporting all of those people, they need the sanitation engineers, right? So there's all
Mhm.
kinds of people that are supporting what the community looks like. And so, but I think that
Mhm.
that's interesting too, that you brought up, of thinking about your values for the institution, the organization, and think about it for the artwork, right? Like
Mhm.
there's some artwork, there's some communities out there that I probably could have bought an NFT for, and I probably could have made some money off of, but I'm like, I'm not really into that
Mhm.
kind of art.
Mhm. Totally, I agree.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I
So
totally agree. And I want to just tag on. This is a little like outside the purview of our topic, but I will just
sure.
say on that note of like a city as a community, and it takes all types to run a city. I think this is a really exciting time to not be a programmer or a developer in Web3.
Mm.
There are so many
Why?
tools. There are so many tools being developed right now to launch smart contracts easily. And don't get me wrong, there will always be work for good, solid, smart programmers. But I think up until now, it's been dominated by, that's been the biggest opportunity. And I think right about now is switching over, where that's just one piece of the puzzle. And I'm I mean, I resonated with what you said about, my reflection on Neo Tokyo. I really didn't know what my place was. It's like, I need to teach myself how to code in order to enter into Web3. And then I realized, like, actually, um, I have moderate success in my field as a creative director outside of Web3. And so all I need to do is apply what I'm good at outside of Web3 into Web3. Now there's an expansion happening where really we need every tool set in this space. So that would just be an encouragement for people listening and feeling like a little overwhelmed by the tech. I would not feel that way at all.
I agree with that too, because I know that you and I have connected also on marketing, right? Like you have a background in marketing and I have a background in marketing, and so I was listening to another conversation and reading some stuff, and this one idea popped up again, and it's the fact that and I can't remember who was like the originator of the thought. I think it's been quoted by multiple people over the last like 10, 20 years, but it's the basic premise of the thought is that it's not the best idea that reaches the public and goes viral or becomes mainstream. It's the best idea that's communicated the most clearly, right?
Hmm.
And communicated the most effectively. And it's the best idea. It's the reason why, like, I think about like Apple, the original iPod, right? Like there was other MP3 players before the iPod came onto scene, but the
Hmm.
genius of the Apple branding, instead of saying that it's got X gigabytes and all of these things, they said 10,000 songs in your pocket. And like, I'm a simple
Nice.
person, right? Like, I can understand what 10,000 songs in my pocket means. I'll be like, oh, yeah, I know what that means now. Versus like
Hmm.
an MP3 that can carry all these kinds of files and this kind of digital stuff, right? So I
Hmm.
would agree with you. And going back to the community side, I think it's helpful for everyday people like you, like me, that are not on the coding side, that are not deep into the tech side, into the blockchain side, even into the DeFi side or the investing side, but to really come in with a fresh lens, which is why I love this podcast and making things simple for people and saying, hey, there are communities that are forming around ideas. They are either
Hmm.
using Web3 technology to create a community where it's like the art brings people together, or it's a mission statement, or like Neo Tokyo, or a group of values that bring people together. But finding some kind of community that speaks to who you are. And then there's other ways of doing it, like creator coins. Creator coins are a really simple way to bring people together, where like you can buy the coin and trade the coin with other people in the community, and you can do it to support a creator, or you can do it to support a cause. And so it's really finding people through the internet that have values with the same of what you're trying to accomplish. And I agree with you, it's people crave community, but they crave being a part of something bigger than themselves, which is what these communities a lot of times are doing. What would you
Hmm.
say to that? How would you answer those couple things?
I mean, I think that's exactly right. I think that the possibly possibly saying that people crave community is not as true as it is that they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves.
Mm,
If I really think about a community, it's like we want to be in relationship.
yeah.
But I think what a community is relationship and being a part of something else and feeling that sense of like alignment, and of the common goal. I think that is what a community is, the group of relationships that are aligned in some kind of common goal. And so, um, yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, really, really, really quickly tying what we were talking about is sort of, non-programmers. Honestly, I think that community managers, moderators, um, I think that's going to be the most sought after position in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe
Mm,
the next 1 to 3 years. I mean, like there's so few people that are like crushing it at that right now because it's a relatively newer thing. Like, and think about the barrier to entry of that. It's like find a community that you love, that you want to spend time in, and have decent people skills and good communication skills. None of those have anything to do with Web3 in any way, shape, or form. And yet, there's so many people out there that could get plugged in. And it's such a huge need because so far, Web3 is run by like the tech people, the nerds, the salesmen, and like the creatives. And none of those three are really known for being that great at like fostering community and being pastoral. So I don't know. That's just another plug. I just really am feeling like this is a time for people who are sensing that they want to dig in and don't know where to start. Like there's so much opportunity there. And I think these communities really, they really need these shepherds and people to come alongside and, repeat the mission and come alongside and bring people together and sort of set the tone. It's not just like we're throwing a bunch of people into Discord and just sort of like seeing what happens, like Squid Game style. There's got to be leaders in there.
I just had a very real mental, even though I've never seen like the show, I had a very real mental image of like Squid Games with Discord. Like, oh my gosh, like that would be awful.
Yes, I've been in Discords like that. It is awful.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, because here's the thing is that these institutions, these organizations, these groups of people that are coming together and uniting around artwork, or they're uniting around a cause, they're coming together and they're saying like, "Hey, let's achieve this thing together, or let's do this thing together." And some of them are skyrocketing. They're taking off like the moon. They get an influx of tens of thousands of people sometimes into these communities, but then if they don't have the right community managers, if they don't have the right moderators in place, then that momentum is going to be lost and people are going to move on to the next shiny thing. And
Hmm.
so I think it's a lot like pretty much anything else. It's a lot like growing a church, or a lot like growing a nonprofit, or a lot like growing a business. There always has to be something else that you're trying to achieve together. Like
Hmm.
if you reach a finish line, if you make it to the moon, then next you aim for Mars, right? Like if you
Yep.
make it to the moon, the next you look for Elon Musk, who's going to take you to the next best place. And so having something next that's coming, I think is going to be really important. And it's going to come down to the community moderators and them to basically say like, hey, this is your idea to the people who are creating the tech or those kinds of things. Let's do this, and let's build up momentum, and let's get the community excited again and keep it going. And because the interesting thing with community is sometimes there's no scoreboard unless you make yourself one, right? Where it's like, okay, well, maybe my scoreboard needs to be X number of people on this Twitter space, or on this Zoom call, or at an event together. And I think that's one of the reasons why I got into Web3 in general, is because of the implications on the events industry of these
Hmm.
communities coming together, and they're going to crave doing events together, whether that's virtually or in person. And that's why I got
Absolutely.
involved, is because what the communities were going to want to do at some point, because I
Yeah.
do have the events background. So, well, dude, this has
Which
been an
I
awesome
think is going to be huge.
conversation. Yeah. What was
Let me
that?
just let me just make a comment on something you're saying. I'm vibing with a lot, but I'm going to push back a little bit on the word achieve, because
Hmm.
I think a true, this is just my opinion. I've actually seen it in a couple of communities, and I've seen communities attempt to achieve things. And you're right, once they're achieved, sometimes that dopamine rush comes and goes, and then there's another goal, and it just doesn't feel like the same, or the momentum's off. I think that we should be all in community pursuing something,
Hmm.
which I think is different than achieving, because those goals will come and go. But I'll just bring it back to Neo Tokyo, because to be honest, this is where I've learned what I've learned is that we're pursuing something. I mean, being sort of the elites of the Web3 builders, that's not a goal that you can check off. I mean, we're never going to say like, oh, we did it. It's a goal to pursue. It's a direction that we're going in together. And even when the leaders are not coming up with the next thing, we are all figuring out how we would like to pursue this goal, because we inherently want to. I mean, I think that's kind of, I think that's the mark of a sustainable and strong community, is that if there was no concrete goal, and the leadership dipped out, even for a time, would the members still know where they're going? Would they still be interested? Because you could take the community away and they still have the same desire, whether they're in that community or not. But
So good. Point taken. I love those two thoughts. So they're worth repeating, so I'm going to repeat them. So be in a community pursuing something rather than achieving something. And I mean, the shout out to Neo Tokyo. Like, you've got me convinced. Like, I got to start looking. I haven't even looked at the community. I'm like, all right, like I got to start working towards getting me one of the NFTs to join that community. Cause I'm like, yes. But then if making the mission, making the vision, making that what that thing is that you're trying to achieve, like that you're pursuing together, you said, make it so clear and so compelling that if the leadership left and the community is still there, would they still know why they're there and what they're doing, right? Like, I love those two thoughts, and that's super, super important. Well, hey man, I would love to give you any final words as we close this podcast.
I think that might have been my final words. Thanks for having me on here. Yeah, again, just to be clear, not shilling Neo Tokyo or anything, but that is the place that I learned that was the first community, and that's where I learned a lot of the important lessons that, we've had our ups and downs. I mean, literally the leadership did sort of disappear, but we stayed. I stayed. I was clear why I stayed, and so I think it was just a really great opportunity for me to see, like, okay, this is what makes a strong community. I'm really blessed to have stumbled upon one of those so early, and I kind of want to spread that love.
I love that. I love that. And if my encouragement to the founders or to the leaders or to the dreamers who are thinking about starting something is, if you haven't found what that thing is that you're pursuing yet, then it's okay. Like, take some time, think about it, and maybe it evolves over time, as it probably will and probably should. I know that at Reformers, we're really excited about just helping other Christians come into the Web3 space and use it. And so that's a never ending thing, because there's always going to be more people to bring in and onboard and to use it. And you're even helping with the builders program within the Reformers NFT project. So excited for what we've got coming up. And if you're listening to this, number one, before I forget about this, you're the first guest on Web3 Simplified Podcast. So beyond excited about that. But then, Carroll, how can people find you to stay in touch? Cool Fire Studios and you personally.
Yeah, I am at Abundant without the U on Twitter. Brainstorm.eth is my name. Recent ENS pickup. Cool Fire. We're at Cool Fire Studios. But yeah, hit me up on Twitter. I'm around.
Awesome. Well, Carroll, it's been a pleasure. And thanks everyone for watching or for tuning in. And if you're watching the video version of this, thank you so much for being here with us. If you're listening to this podcast, whether you're watching or listening, I'd be honored to get a review. You can drop a comment on the YouTube video, hit the like button. If you're listening, leave a review, leave a 5-star rating if you feel this warrants a 5-star rating or whatever you feel like is up to you. And if something here was helpful for you, I'd be so honored if you shared it with a friend, shared it in your community, share it in your family or your friends group, whatever that looks like. Thanks, everyone. And to learn more, you can go to web3simplified.xyz. That's web3simplified.xyz, where there's more simple images, concepts, and all kinds of things that have been broken down that are easy to consume and understand. Thanks, you guys, and we'll see you in a future episode. See ya.